we'll go ahead and get started so we can use the rest of our 45 minutes. We'll leave just a few minutes at the end. If anybody just has a burning question, you can just let me know. I want to ask a question, and we'll try to get to that. But I wanted to just start by, all right, so we're here. I imagine a lot of us have been filled with hope, right? We've heard really solid teaching. We're ready to go back home and implement this. Maybe we haven't been as faithful to some of the things you brothers were arguing for, and especially you with all the way, right away, with joy. You phrased it a little bit differently. Do we just bust the door down and begin to do that right away? Do we give a talk to our families? How does that booty camp start? So we're going back to our houses. How do we begin this?
I would say we always start at, well, always, depends on the age of your children, but certainly as much as possible, explain ahead of time. You know, we have not been consistent. We're going to be consistent from now on, and here's the rules. You know, immediate, complete, and sweet. You're going to get spanked for rolling your eyes, and certainly set the expectations, and then start doing it. But you don't want to come in out of the blue, and where did that come from? Just say, look, we've been, and sometimes there's a little bit of confession in there. We just haven't been doing what we should be, but now we're going to, and this is what it's going to look like.
So one of the things you mentioned at the end, and you've done a sermon series on affirmation, just think that's extremely important. How does that shape the heart of the child, right? Because we talked a lot about spanking. How important is it to come alongside that, and even maybe more than correcting, to be speaking and praising God's work in the lives of our children?
Yeah, so the book Practicing Affirmation, I actually have a copy right here that you referred to. I would highly recommend you buy this. It's not but a few dollars on Amazon. Practicing Affirmation by Sam Crabtree. It really helped me when I first bought and read this. My kids were just getting to the age where they could understand affirmation, and it was holding more weight when I got a hold of it, so it was perfect timing. But he starts out, and I think it's really important to root it in God, and that God is an affirmer. He affirms us, well done, good and faithful servant. That's what we're literally living for the day that we get that affirmation from God. And then he affirms his son. This is my beloved son with whom I am well pleased. So the Father speaks to the Son with affirmation. I am well pleased with him. So we want to imitate God's speech, and God affirms. And so that's the primary thing to say about affirmation is it's God talk. It's how he talks to his children, and therefore we want to imitate it. At a lower level, we would say it's really effective. You know, we're not pragmatists, right? We don't just do things because it works. But it does work at getting to their heart. Affirmation is very effective. So is the rod. They're effective in different ways. But affirmation, the book Shepherding a Child's Heart talks a lot about shepherding the heart, right, and getting to the heart. And affirmation is a very powerful way to grab the hearts of your children. And if you don't affirm, then you're going to see, you're probably going to provoke them to anger along the way and see a lot of things that you don't want to see. Affirmation really changes the temperature of the house in ways that few things do. I don't know if you want to speak into it or me, but the difference between encouragement and affirmation may be worth, I don't know if you have that offhand. I can say, and maybe you can follow up. So encouragement is good, but encouragement is kind of like, hey, you can do it. You know, it's like Noah has been trying to practice soccer and get better at soccer so he can get on the soccer team soon. He didn't make the team, and so he's playing catch up because he didn't play for many years. So I'm encouraging him a lot. You can do this, right? You're giving hope about something that's possible. That's a good thing. But then I'll go out in the garage with him, and he's running on the treadmill and all that, and I'll say, that was a good run. That was better than last week. I'm affirming something he actually did. All right, affirmation is looking at something that's already been accomplished and saying that was good. And then the God-centered affirmation is what we ultimately want to do. And we want to point to when you treated your brother or sister this way, that is like what God does. And God enabled you to love that person in this way, or God enabled you to not hit your sibling when you really wanted to. God helped you to have self-control, and so you're rooting the affirmation in God and in His enablement. So they're both good. We should use encouragement and affirmation, but they're not the same thing. And I would even say affirmation's more powerful. So I don't know if there's anything to follow up additionally.
Probably the only thing I would add is in our minds, hopefully we are affirming, pick a number out of the air, 10 times every time we spank, or, but we are affirming much more frequently and often than we're having to discipline. And I think it makes both the affirmation and discipline more effective.
I'll ask one a little bit more specific, and I'll generalize it just so everybody can sort of apply it to their own situation. We have a 4-year-old who has very emotional outbursts, often in response to spanking, but sometimes for other non-disciplinary things. The crying fit can sometimes last anywhere from 1 to 20 minutes and can make normal discipline feel useless. What should we do? Essentially, should we wait and let that change naturally? Should we spank a child who's throwing a fit? And I'll just say more generally, how do we deal with young children who are throwing fits? Screaming, kicking, breaking.
Depends how young is young. I mean, I've heard people put them in the bathtub and spray cold water on them and, wake them up. But typically we would spank again, and if they just absolutely did not calm down, then that's when we would set them in another room for 10 minutes and then come back out and say, okay, tell mama you're sorry or whatever, and we might give them that 15 minutes or so to calm down, but then come back and make sure that we're still dealing with the original problem.
So if a spanking seems to provoke more anger, you're saying the best thing to do is to spank again and to try that method and to work through that?
Yeah, I'd say spank again, and then again, if they're still almost out of control, then I would put them in the room, bring them back out. Now, say you're sorry. If they do, then that's fine. It has registered. But then if they're still defiant, then I would spank again, put them back in the room, rinse and repeat.
No, amen. I think maybe one thing that could be asked, at least, this may or may not be part of the problem, but I think it is always helpful to have some measure of self-reflection and say, have I provoked them to anger in some way, or is there something we did or didn't do that could have led up to this? And maybe it's a no, or maybe it's a yes. Maybe dad hasn't been home for weeks or not paid attention to them and they're starving for attention and affection, or there could be a number of things that could potentially have led to that. Not that it justifies any of that behavior, but it may be helpful to think about some of why those outbursts might be happening.
So another specific one, tips or tricks for mom. So mom winning the influence of an overall well-behaved but stubborn, strong-willed Christian preteen girl. So mom winning the heart of a teen girl.
Get my wife here for that one. But lots of affirmation where affirmation is possible. And lots of entering into her world where that's possible, but yet still holding standards that need to be held up. That may be too general, but that's. Jim Neuheiser wrote a book. I'm trying to think of it now. It's When Good Kids Make Bad Choices, and he's quick to say that he didn't choose the title because there are no good kids. We're all sinners, but when good kids make bad choices, and he gets into some really rebellious children, he talks about a discipline offensive and a love offensive, and really, again, trying to enter the other person's world, lots of affirmation wherever it's possible, and then, but still upholding the standards.
Thank you. With the use of technology, what advice would y'all give to parents regarding the use or misuse for the parents and children? So the use of technology in the home.
I think technology should be a small part of the home, certainly. I think the norm in our culture right now is that it's taking a really huge place in the home, and I think we should, I think across the board, just say it should be a very small role technology plays in our homes. It's going to be up to families as to some of those things, how much or little. We do very little. I don't even know the last time that we watched movies. I mean, it's pretty uncommon in our home. And so I guess it depends on what type of technology. That's a whole nother discussion, but and what we're doing when we have it. But I think one of the things we really want to guard from, and we're talking mainly younger ages, I guess, is just giving a device as a kind of way to pacify them, like you would give a pacifier to an infant to stop crying. Giving a device to a child so that we don't have to actually train them, right? And so this happens a lot, and I'm not going to judge you. Okay, I'm just trying to pass on something here. But if in a restaurant, for example, rather than just having your kids be present at the table and learn how to sit and eat and be a part of that relational time, just giving a device to them so that you don't have to deal with it in the restaurant. I don't think that's the best path to go. I would encourage to work away from that. I'm not saying it's a great sin or something, but I don't think that's generally the way that we want to cultivate a loving relationship with them. I don't know if you would want to add on to any more on technology.
Just kind of reiterate them. It's such an easy babysitter. It's so tempting to just say, here, do it, and all of a sudden the house is quiet. So it's like John Mark said, though, it's up to us to train them. I'm proud of my daughters or my kids with our grandkids is that they really limit it, and a lot of it, especially at the meal. I mean, how oftentimes you go into restaurants, everybody's looking at their phone, but they just don't allow that, so that kids have to interact as a family.
Yeah, and maybe one other thing to say on that, like I do think there's a time where it can be helpful. So if we have a serious meeting, or like we're having city group, and we have a bunch of kids that are up in the upper room, some of y'all know how our house is, and so we'll turn on a little movie and have someone in there, and it's like there's a time for it, and it serves all of us, and there's a time for this. We're not saying it's all wrong, but if it's just because I want to watch something on TV and I don't want to actually parent my kids, and so it's just a way to get them away, and not have to deal with them, that's the type of thing I think that we want to really guard from, is why are we doing it?
And I'll just throw one more thing in. We were raising our children before the internet. So for us, it was television. We were highly limiting television. One time, we were moving into a new house. So it was like, turn on the TV and just let them watch TV. So we're putting everything away. And we noticed after everything was done, we said, all right, now the kids, hey, we're bored. So we'll go read a book. Oh, I don't want to read a book. We want to watch TV. We said, oh, really? So I put the TV in the closet for the next 3 months. I said, okay, we're getting back into books and not to the TV. So it trains you. I mean, the kids, they're drawn to that. So for a number of reasons. So training that, if we allow that, our kids aren't going to read, our kids aren't going to interact. They're going to do something else with their time that's much more passive and, frankly, not good for them.
I have to say this one last thing on this question. There's a level of hypocrisy as well if we are always on our devices and then we're asking our kids to not have that be a part of their life, right? I mean, we can see, going back to the provoking them to anger thing, hey, you don't get to watch iPad or watch stuff, and then you're over there on your phone for hours. Like we need to think through that. Obviously, we're adults and we can manage things, and there's not a one-to-one kid to parent aren't the same, but I do think we need to be mindful to the possible inconsistency there is there.
Thank you. So we've created a culture in our home where we're negotiating, and that's tolerated, and the kids are expecting negotiation to get what they want rather than just doing what mom and dad, you're getting the green cup because dad says you're getting the green cup. No, I want the pink cup, right? So that a negotiation culture has been created. How do we change course?
Again, I think it's explaining things that, once you can. We did allow, we would say, can I make an appeal? So we did allow that, if I said, look, it's bedtime, I want you to go to bed right now, say, Daddy, can I make an appeal? What is it? I got 2 more pages to read, and I've been, or, Mama said I could do this. All right, go ahead, I'll give you 10 more minutes or whatever. So we would allow them to ask, but once we asked, if we said no, it's no. So look, here's the green cup. Daddy, I really want the blue cup. Okay, no, Daddy said the green cup, that's it, no more. And now if they keep arguing, and we explain it ahead of time, if you continue to argue, then we get spanked for that. So defining expectations, telling them very clearly that from now on, you can ask once. If I say no, then it's a spanking if you continue to argue.
We do the same thing, and I think it's helpful to remember the principle behind this is that God has given the parent more wisdom than the child. And so the parent knows why they need to drink out of the green cup and not the pink cup. I mean, that's for the parent's wisdom to discern. And as parents, we don't just pick random things. We're trying to do what's best, and the child should recognize they have wisdom, I have to gain wisdom. And so that's why we don't just negotiate all the time, is because we're assuming we're making wise biblical.
And sometimes that wise biblical choice is just a matter of you need to learn authority. So does it really matter if you have the green cup or the pink cup? No, but it does matter that you submit to authority.
And I've heard this, if our kids didn't have a nap today or they got up early, we won't spank. How much consideration, if any at all, should be given to the child's frame? So they're sick, they didn't go to bed on time, things kind of outside their control. Should that influence whether we discipline, like you guys are saying, consistently right away? Should there be some grace there, or is that even grace?
Subjective. I mean, I would say we give grace, but not to the point where they're completely, it's like, hey, you're tired, you still need to control yourself, all right? So I'll give grace in terms of perhaps the immediate outburst or whatever, but now control yourself, or you'll get spanked. So, it's yes. I'm going to allow a little bit of grace if they're really young. Say, well, maybe we need to put them in bed now, but not to let it get out of control. Again, I'd just say using some reason in there, but not to the point where they're allowed to just go all out fit because they didn't get their nap.
In sort of the same frame, I've heard parents say, I want to teach my kids about the grace of God and hold the rod. So is it ever appropriate? Is that a biblical category in an effort to teach grace, to spare discipline when it is deserved?
And I'd say you could do that on occasion if they're already repentant. When does God grant us? I mean, when we repent, then He's faithful and just to forgive us and cleanse us from all our sins. But so if they're repentant, fine. But if they're, defiant or they just got away with it, probably not a great idea. We do want to show grace for sure. And again, there may be some times when they're extra tired or extra hungry or whatever when we allow that grace. But it's kind of always tied to, are they already repentant? Yeah, should they get a spanking? Yeah, but they're already repentant, and okay, we'll cover it.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the word grace, I try to broaden that a little bit with how I help my kids understand discipline. It's like the fact that your daddy cares about you like this is grace. That is God's grace to you. So the discipline isn't like bad and then not getting the spanking is good. It's like the spanking is grace, right? I know we share that understanding. So I think we want to pass that on to our kids where they have a broader understanding of grace, that God has been gracious to them to put them in a home with parents who care about their souls and their lives. And again, a 3-year-old isn't going to get that concept, but as they get older, they can begin to understand that more.
So this is for dads. If mom is at home with the kids most of the day, giving 75 to 80% of the discipline, what are some practical ways that dad can maintain his ultimate authority in the home? Should mom save some spankings for dad? Should he be really hard when he comes home? How does dad keep that ultimate authority when the children are young? Mom is giving the majority of the spankings in theory.
One thing we did is when I was home, if they disobeyed their mother, I spanked them. I said, I'm spanking you because you disobeyed your mother. And when she speaks, she's speaking from my authority. So ultimately you disobeyed my authority, so I'm going to spank you. So, but certainly if I wasn't home, she dealt with it. But that's, you know, I did that simply because I wanted to make sure that they understood that her authority is coming from me. You disobey her, you deal with me. But not when we were both home.
Yeah, I don't know how far we want to go into this because I know the men, we just talked about this. We don't want to do anything to undermine the authority God's given the wife. And I think the burden of responsibility is on us as husbands to reaffirm to our children, you are to obey your mother. She is your authority. And I really appreciate what you said earlier about not always waiting until the dad gets home for discipline, because I think it undermines that mother. And I understand the motive behind it. I understand why a family might do that to try to honor the authority of that husband and things like that. But I think that you can honor the authority of the husband or the father without passing off the wife's authority. I think both of those things need to be guarded and maintained. And I would say a very serious sin in our home is any type of back talk or mistreatment of Priscilla. I know some people have said, like, if they have 3 rules in their home, one of them is don't mistreat your mother. That's like a serious high-level offense. And I don't disagree with that. I think that is a really good way to help our children.
Just a few more, and then we'll open it up. Should we ever allow grandparents or babysitters, someone other than the parents, to spank the children?
I'd be real cautious about babysitters. Our children have asked that we not be quite so grandparently sometimes, and actually, you know, so we do spank our grandchildren at times. And as long as we're trying to be very consistent with the parents' standards. Okay, we're not making our standards. Of course, with children, we don't have any. No, grandchildren. But we say, look, your mother and father would not allow this. We're going to spank you. And there's some things, obviously, if they're just flat disobeying us, then we spank them because your parents don't allow that. You know, our oldest and youngest are 19 years apart. So my oldest spanked the youngest too when she was babysitting. And as a matter of fact, the kid said, we'd rather be spanked by mom and daddy than by Melissa. So she didn't hold back, I guess. But so I think the short answer is yes. Again, I'd be very cautious about babysitters unless they were like, you know, part of your family. But certainly, I say grandparents, if withholding or upholding, rather, the same standards of the parents.
Yeah, and I think that this view that I share as well, I would agree with that. It is somewhat new. I mean, even schools used to spank, and I mean, it was the common understood thing that someone other than the mother and father would spank your child. That seems crazy to us, but for a lot of history, that is how it was. And so, you know, I don't think that's the best thing to do, but it has been done and, you know, worked at some level, I guess.
I distinctly remember the paddle being hung up in the 1st and 2nd and 3rd grade in front of the classroom, and I went to a Catholic school. I remember the nuns using them on the rambunctious kids in the back. So yeah, I grew up with that for sure.
Just curious about personality types. Obviously here we try to take a thoroughly biblical approach to anthropology, but is there any warrant for understanding a child's peculiar frame and dealing with them differently according to that?
I would say absolutely, and it's probably one thing I don't think I did well enough. But you know, I've got some children that were complete bookworms and kind of just lost in space for half the time. So half of their disobedience was just kind of being completely, clueless about what was going on, what they should be doing. So now I would spank them about the same way I would spank the defiant ones, and I think in retrospect I would have changed that some. But I think the short answer is yeah, some are just kind of clueless, may still need to be spanked because they need to pay more attention to what's going on. Others are just flat defiant. Some, like I said, our youngest was like, you look at him cross-eyed and then he breaks down and seeks forgiveness. So definitely some require, I think, harder spankings than others. We want to be consistent in how they respond to us, but we may discipline them a little differently depending on their personality.
Yeah, and I think a biblical warrant for that is in Proverbs you have a few different categories. So you have a fool, and then you have the simple, and those are not the same thing. The one who is simple is one who is largely ignorant, or to use the illustration of our kid, just kind of wanders around, forgets what he was told, and he literally forgot what he was told, or she forgot what they were told. That's going to be dealt with differently than the one who's outwardly defiant and says, I know what you said, and I'm not going to do it. I mean, and so I think absolutely we need to take those things into consideration. My daughter has never got more than like 3 spankings because she's crying if she even knows she's getting one, and she's genuinely like, I'll never do it again, She's broken before it happens, and yet the other ones have a different disposition. So yeah, I think we definitely have to do that.
I imagine, and this could be a long discussion, what about ADD, ADHD? Is there ever a diagnosis that would warrant sinful behavior? Is that sinful behavior? How do you encourage our parents who may be in those seasons with children who have received those diagnoses?
And I'll admit that's an area that I would need to study a little bit more, but your body can't make you sin. Okay, so you may have some cognitive issues that take a little more focus. Okay, maybe a more simple command. Maybe instead of pick up your room, I'll tell you pick up these 10 things, even though it's an older child. So I may try to deal with whatever the child is struggling with, but still with the intention that we still have to get after the heart. Still need to be obedient. So even if I have to adjust what I'm telling them, I can still. I have a daughter with Down syndrome, okay, and she has to obey. Now, I'll tell her something, and I can tell that the things are clicking, or I give her a little more time to make sure she's comprehending what I'm telling her, and then obey. So it may appear that I'm being more lax in terms of how much time I give her to obey, but I can see she's processing and then deciding if she's going to obey, and then goes one way or the other. But we still basically deal with her the same way we dealt with our others. We just made adjustments as to how long and what level of commands that we gave her.
2 more. You mentioned wanting forgiveness, wanting a confession and forgiveness, thoroughly biblical. How do we know if our children are truly asking for forgiveness, or if they've just learned that's the way back into fun? How much are we judging motives? How much are we being on guard against legalism and just mere behaviorism? Can you speak into that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think when they're little, it's probably a lot more behavioralistic. I don't know how much they're going to think about their repent and I can't remember if it was John Owen or one of them saying, "Till sin be bitter, Christ will not be sweet." I'm not going to get that from a 4-year-old, but hopefully as they get older, I'm just putting more and more of the gospel and more of why in there, so that hopefully by the time they're, I don't know, pick an age, 12 or so, it really does start to grieve them that they sinned against us and offended us, and I don't think they will ever get there apart from God renewing their heart. I think as long as they're unsaved, it's going to be, this is how I don't get spanked. But at some point, we pray that God takes the heart of stone out and gives them. But only God can regenerate them, and praying that He uses us as the means of grace to do that. So it's going to going to kind of be more behavioralistic, but I'm going to keep going after the heart and keep reaching and keep explaining things to them.
And then lastly, is it appropriate to expect obedience when we constantly command them from another room instead of coming to their level and being considerate of their play that they're engrossed in at the time? So I think the question is asking, is it a misuse of authority for parents to just be shouting commands from another room without at least entering into their situation and trying to understand what they're doing and considering that?
I guess it's a little hard to answer that without knowing the exact situation, but I think we always want to honor everyone. We always want to be fair and just. And so if we're yelling into another room and we have no idea what's really going on in that room, then yeah, that's clearly wrong. We could be wrong about what we're saying. But if we are quite clear what just happened in that other room, do I have to lay eyes on it to verify that you just yelled at the top of your lungs to your sibling, and I could hear that in the other room? I'm pretty sure I know what just happened there. I mean, we want to be right. I think we don't want to be wrong and punished for something we're ignorant about. So we just need to have enough information to know that we're actually addressing real sin that's occurred. I don't know if that's getting at maybe where that question was going.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. And also just, again, entering into their world a little bit. You know, if we've allowed them to watch a movie, it's time to go, and you take a look, and the movie's going to be over in 10 minutes. You know, okay, we'll wait till the movie, you know, rather if it's going to be over another 30 minutes, sorry, we'll come watch it another time. Or they're playing with Legos, and they're about to almost done putting the roof on the structure or whatever. Okay, I'll give you 5 minutes. If they're engrossed in something, I would rather not say, unless there's some real urgent need, we're going right now, put it away, stop. It's like, okay, 5 minutes, you know, you can read the book for 5 more minutes, you can, you know, bedtime's in 5 minutes or whatever. Give them some adjustment time and perhaps complete what they're doing. So we are, I think, respectful, even as for them being children, respectful in what they're doing and not being demanding in an arbitrary way, that there's a purpose for our demands, and it's somewhat reasonable in terms of allowing them to complete something they're engrossed in.
I just wanted to, is that all the questions? That's good. Okay, so I just wanted to say a kind of concluding thought to all of this to maybe balance out for someone. We really were trying to speak in all of today toward younger years. And so if somebody has teenagers and you're like, man, all they're talking about is the rod, you know, we're not trying to speak into older ages so much as those younger ages. And I think that's important to remember, because I think Ted Tripp is right, that the primary objective for those first 5 years is to establish authority and to help our children see the goodness of that authority. You can build off that foundation, and so that's why we're saying a lot of the things we are. Ask us questions about teenagers, and some of these answers are going to be a little bit different, but just keep that in mind. So,
and we do want to have a couple of more of these and probably have some different focuses